Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Alright, so I've been meaning to tackle this issue. Joe Biden and frankly, Joe Biden's entire team continue to rant and rave about just how good bidenomics is working. They want to rewrite history and pretend as if the last 2 years didn't really happen. And probably worst of all, they want to pretend as if the current state right now of the economy is peachy and amazing for everyone. Of course, you know that that's a whole load of you-know-what. Just from personal experience and personal feeling alone, well, for this video, I want to get into the data. And more specifically, I want to focus on all of the lies coming from this administration, because the whole notion of bidenomics working is literally built on misrepresented data. Let's expose the whole thing, but before we get into any of the detail, this video is brought to you guys by a sponsor, so let's quickly play that clip. This video is brought to you guys by Masterworks. Look friends, the media would love you to believe that the economy is in great shape, that bidenomics is working. They're telling you that inflation is cooling down, even though the cost of housing has tripled in some districts, and the cost to feed yourself and your family has essentially doubled. You know that the basic essentials to live are up across the board. And most importantly, in times of extreme inflation, you want to be protecting what you have not by holding BS fiat currency, but by holding assets that gain value in inflationary times. Well, here's a great option: collectively investing in fine art. And today's sponsor, Masterworks, has generated over $45 million in art sales and distributed the net returns to investors like you. Recent exits have delivered 17.8%, 21.5%, all the way up to 35% annualized returns. Of course, as a disclaimer, past performances are not indicative of future results, but the simple fact is that fine art is a tangible asset that gains value over time. And by joining Masterworks, you could join the over 750,000 people who have signed up so far, joining a collective fund that invests in art. Liberal Hive Mind viewers get to skip the line and start collecting today by simply clicking the link down below in the description at masterworks.art/liberalhivemind. Alright, a huge thank you to Masterworks. Now let's get into this bidenomics scam. Let's get into it systematically. So you probably saw the headlines. Democrats are essentially celebrating that inflation is down. Joe Biden keeps touting this success that supposedly inflation is down to 3%.
And it's going to continue to go down. While there's more work ahead, earlier this week, the Washington Post suggested Republicans may have to find something else to criticize me for. Now that inflation is coming down. Maybe they'll decide to impeach me because it's coming down. I don't know.
And he's also saying it's thanks to his Inflation Reduction Act, which not a single Republican voted for.
Not a single Republican voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which had all this money in it for climate, which provides funding to combat climate change.
Now, I don't think I need to even address the idea that $1 trillion spending package, billions upon billions of dollars in subsidies spending, somehow being correlated with a reduction in inflation. I mean, obviously that's just stupid. If anything, Republicans not voting for that bill is a shining endorsement. Let's not focus on the bill, I want to focus on the number. Joe Biden keeps touting this 3% inflation. I keep seeing Democrats posting this photo claiming even Fox News is celebrating Biden's tremendous success in reducing the inflation rate. Almost back at the 2% target, or the Fed target, only 1 point off at 3%. Folks, this is a lie. Just like all the other data that the Biden Twitter handlers celebrate, it's complete bogus. I mean, simply follow the Federal Reserve from back as far as mid-2022, even before we hit 9.1% inflation, the highest in nearly 40 years. Jerome Powell has said one thing from the start: that headline inflation isn't even relevant. The Fed isn't raising rates based on headline inflation. In fact, they're hardly even paying it any attention. The most important number is core inflation. Core inflation is all items minus food and energy. Here's the chart that people should be looking at. 12-month percent change in CPI for all urban consumers, not seasonally adjusted, from June 2022, which was that 9.1% peak, now to June 2023. The blue line is headline inflation. The red line is core. What do you notice about that line? It's essentially a straight trend line. It's been hovering anywhere between 5 and 6% for the last 12 months. In other words, inflation is sticky. Joe is claiming that inflation is down, but if inflation was really down, we'd see a less hawkish Fed. But what are we seeing this month? Another raise in interest rates. Essentially, the economy is going to be even slower moving forward. Things aren't getting better, they're just as bad as they've been. It's just that headline inflation, the number that all the mainstream media outlets are promoting out there, makes it seem as though there's a dramatic decrease in the cost of living. There isn't. And Joe Biden doesn't get to take a victory lap over a slight decrease in inflation. You notice how they love to frame the conversation over the last 12 months. Here's a great moment with an economic advisor, I believe. We'll call him a Biden economic clown on Fox News, touting the success of Bidenomics.
Look, gas, here's a good way to think of it, because we've had rising wages and falling prices. A year ago, if you pulled up to the pump, you could get 5.5 gallons of gas for an hour of work for a middle wage worker. So you pull up to the pump, it takes you an hour of work to get 5.5 gallons. Now you get 8 gallons for that hour of work. Okay, so that's a 40+% improvement.
Okay,
and
but let's talk about where we started, because when he took office, it was $2.39 a gallon. Now it's about $3.60 a gallon. So we're still, in less than 2 years, in a worse place.
So it depends on, yes, it depends. I mean, it depends on what your benchmark is.
It depends where your benchmark is. Yeah, no S, Sherlock. The Biden White House purposely is putting their benchmark 12 months ago. Well, that's not the way it works, you freaking goofballs. Joe Biden took office 2.5 years ago. That's the benchmark. And since then, well, obviously, I don't need to convince you that literally everything is more expensive now, do I? And that's really where headline inflation comes into play. They're trying to celebrate headline inflation coming down, trying to rewrite history. They want us to forget that headline inflation was at 9% 12 months ago, essentially up 9% from when Joe Biden took office. That year-to-year, month-to-month slow creep up in prices is still here. Gas prices are still up 50% from where they were. Food prices are up tremendously. That impacts people's cost of living, and then on top of that, the Fed continues to increase rates. So not only are people experiencing a cost of living crisis when it comes to basic necessities thanks to Bidenomics, but then the cost of finance is 2 times more expensive. Interest rates have more than doubled, and a lot of people are living on credit. I mean, baseline people live on debt. It's called a mortgage. Credit card debt in the US hits an all-time high of $930 billion, and nearly 4 in 10 Americans now struggle to pay their usual bills. Yet this goofball continues to celebrate his incredible success.
It's the lowest point in inflation, the lowest point in over 2 years.
They also continue to push this lie.
4%. Inflation has fallen by 2/3. Wages are higher than before the pandemic, and businesses have invested more than $500 billion in clean energy and manufacturing. In short, the president's economic plan is indeed working.
At the same time, pay for low-wage workers has gone up at a faster pace than over 2 decades. Wages are growing faster than inflation.
Inflation has fallen and wages are higher. Joe Biden is even saying that wages are growing faster than inflation. Or what they love to say is that wages are up from pre-pandemic levels. I mean, obviously wages are up from pre-pandemic levels. Trillions of dollars were injected into the economy, but when adjusted with inflation, what's known as real wage growth, this chart right over here tells you the whole story. Consumer Price Index, the CPI from 2021 to the peak of inflation in 2022. That orange line represents inflation during the worst moments. Look at wages, trending significantly below inflation, huh? And what do you notice from the years prior, or in January of 2021, when the office of the presidency was handed over? It was the exact inverse. In other words, during the Trump years, wages were outpacing inflation. Just take a look at this chart right over here. Here's real wage growth throughout Donald Trump's entire 4 years in office. You notice all the green? That means positive wage growth, meaning people's salaries, people's wages are going up at a higher rate than inflation is reducing your purchasing power throughout that period of time. It's completely inverted the moment Joe Biden took office. That little negative red area is essentially the visual representation of Bidenomics. And let's go back to Bernie Sanders' favorite thing to say, that when Republicans were in office, when Donald Trump was president, all of his policies, his tax cuts, etc., it was all benefiting the 1%, the wealthiest and the richest few. The chart right below represents real wage growth during the Trump years for middle-class and blue-collar workers. A 7.3% increase during the Donald Trump years. The average between the Nixon and Obama era at 0.6% and Biden negative 2.1%. The reality is, when Trump was president, people were actually winning. Now people can't afford a home, people can't afford their basic expenses, they can't afford their mortgages, they're saddled with debt, the debt is compounding, rates aren't going down anytime soon. In other words, that financial squeeze that's happening right now isn't getting better, and people aren't earning more to be able to compensate, to be able to afford this new increased basic cost of living. The average American is being financially crushed. That's the reality. And as this is happening, Joe Biden is taking to the stage, patting himself on the back, standing on the first place podium with confetti and all, giving a freaking victory speech. You are a clown. You are a liar, a snake and a cheat. His manufacturing jobs data, his jobs data in general is bullshit. The inflation data that he's celebrating is bullshit. The fact that his bills had anything to do with it, other than cause the crisis that we're in, and of course the sticky component of core CPI, it's all nonsense. It's all lies, it's all propaganda, misrepresentation of the facts and data. And you have the blue anon clowns clapping like seals, linking these charts and numbers that they simply don't understand, and pretending as if Joe Biden is doing a swell job. They'll take pandemic, economy destruction numbers from the Trump era and compare it with Joe Biden and claim, well, Donald Trump lost us jobs, and now Joe Biden has created all these jobs. It's total nonsense. During the Trump years, you were richer, you were freer, you were more independent, especially the middle class. People were actually making economic advancements. All of it has been lost in a very short period of time as a result of bidenomics. That's the reality. Take it to the frickin' bank. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.